Warning, loud noises may be played at times. Please turn down your volume. If you are sensitive to gore, then please leave this video. I just want to start off by saying, if you want an answer at the end, prepare to be disappointed. There just isn't one. I was an intern at Nickelodeon Studios for a year in 2005 for my degree in animation. It wasn't paid, of course. Most internships aren't. But it did have some perks beyond education. To adults, it might not seem like a big one, but most kids at the time would go crazy over it. Now, since I worked directly with the editors and animators, I got to view the new episodes before they aired. I'll get right to it without giving too many unnecessary details. They had recently been making the SpongeBob movie, and the entire staff was somewhat sapped of creativity, so it took them longer to start up the season. But the delay lasted longer for more upsetting reasons. The problem is, with the Series 4 premiere that set everyone and everything back for several months, me and two other interns were in the editing room, along with lead animators and sound editors from the final cut. We received the copy that was supposed to be Fear of the Krabby Patty and gathered around a screen to watch. Now, given that it isn't final yet, animators often put a mock title card, sort of as an inside joke for us, with phony, oftentimes lewd titles, such as How Sex Doesn't Work, instead of a rockabye bibble. When SpongeBob and Patrick adopt a sea scallop, nothing particularly funny, but work-related chuckles. So when we saw the title card, Squidward's Suicide, we didn't think of it more than a morbid joke. One of the interns did a small throat laugh at it. The happy-go-lucky music plays as normal. The story began with Squidward practicing his clarinet, hitting a few sour notes like normal. We hear SpongeBob laughing outside, and Squidward stops, yelling at him to keep it down as he has a concert that night and he needs to practice. SpongeBob says, okay, and goes to see Sandy with Patrick. The bubbles splash, screen comes up, and we see the ending of Squidward's concert. This is when things seem to be off. While playing, a few frames repeat themselves, but the sound doesn't, at this point, sound is synced up with animation, so yes, that's not that common. But when he stops playing, the sound finishes as if the skip never happened. There was a slight murmuring in the crowd before they began to boo him. Not normal cartoon booing that is common in the show, but you could clearly hear malice in it. Squidward's in full frame and looks visibly afraid. The shot goes to the crowd with the SpongeBob in center frame, and he too is booing, very much unlike it. That isn't the oddest thing, though. What is odd, everyone had hyper-realistic eyes. Very detailed, clearly not shots of real people's eyes, but something a bit more real than CGI. The pupils were red. Some of us looked at each other, obviously confused, since we weren't writers, we didn't question its appeal to the children. The shot goes to Squidward sitting on the edge of his bed, looking very forlorn. The view out of his porthole window of the night sky, so it isn't very long after his concert. The unsettling part is that at this point there's no sound. Literally no sound. Not even the feedback from the speakers in the room. It's as if the speakers were turned off, though their status showed them working perfectly. He just sat there blinking in the silence for about 30 seconds. Then he started to sob softly. He put his hands, tentacles I guess, over his eyes and cried quietly for a full minute more. All the while, a sound in the background very slowly growing from nothing to barely audible. It sounded like a slight breeze through a forest. The screen slowly begins to zoom in on his face. By slow, I mean it's only noticeable if you look at shots 10 seconds apart side by side. His sobbing gets louder, more full of hurt and anger. The screen twitches a bit, as if it twists on itself, for a split second and then goes back to normal. The wind through the trees sound gets slowly louder and more severe, as if a storm is brewing somewhere. The eerie part is that the sound and Squidward's sobbing sounded real, as if the sound wasn't coming from the speakers, but as if the speakers were holes and the sound was coming through from the other side. As good as sound as studios like to have. They don't purchase equipment that are that good of quality. Below the sound of the wind and sobbing, very faint, something sounded like laughing. It came at odd intervals and never lasted more than a second, so you had a hard time pinning it. We watched this show twice, so pardon me if things sound too specific, but I've had time to think about them. After 30 seconds of this, the screen blurred and twitched violently, and something flashed over the screen, as if a single frame was replaced. The lead animation editor paused and rewound frame by frame. What we saw was horrible. It was a still photo of a dead child. He couldn't have been more than 6. His face was mangled and bloodied, one eye dangling over his upturned face and popped. He was naked down to his underwear, his stomach crudely cut open and his entrails laying beside him. He was laying up some pavement that was probably a road. The most upsetting part was that there was a shadow of a photographer. There was no crime tape, no evidence tags or markers, and the angle was completely off for a shot designed to be evidence. It would seem the photographer was the person responsible for the child's death. We were mortified, but pressed on, hoping that it was just a sick joke. The screen flipped back to Squidward, still sobbing louder than before, and half-bodied in frame. There was now what appeared to be blood running down his face from his eyes. The blood was also done in a hyper-realistic style, looking as if you touched it, if you'd get blood on his fingers. The wind sounded now as if they were getting a gale blowing through the forest. Now there were even sounds of snapping branches, laughing, a deep baritone lasting at longer intervals and coming more frequently. After about 20 seconds, the screen twisted again and showed a single frame photo. The editor was unreluctant to go back, but he knew he had to. The time of the photo was what appeared to be a little girl, no older than the first child. She was laying on her stomach, her barrettes, in a pool of blood next to her. Her left eye was popped out and popped, naked except for underpants. Her entrails were piled on top of her, above another crude cut along her back. Again, the body was on the street and the photographer's shadow was visible, very similar in size and shape to the first. I had to choke back from it, and one intern, the only female known, ran out. The show resumed. About 5 seconds after his photo played, Squidward went silent, as did all sound, like it was when the scene started. He put the tentacles down, and his eyes were done in a hyper-realism like the others were at the beginning of this episode. They were bleeding, bloodshot, and pulsating. He just stared at the screen as if watching the viewer. After about 10 seconds, he started sobbing, this time not covering his eyes. The sound was piercing and loud. And most fear-induced of all sobbing was mixed with screams. Tears and blood were dripping down his face at a heavy rate. The wind sound came back, and so did the deep-voiced laughing. And this time, the still photo lasted for a good 5 frames. The animator was able to stop it on the 4th and backed up. This time, it was the photo of a boy about the same age, but this time the scene was different. The entrails were just being pulled to the stomach wound by a large hand, the right eye popping, dangling, blood trickling down it. The animator proceeded. It was hard to believe, but the next one was different, so different that we couldn't tell what. He went to the next, same thing. He went back to the first and played them quicker, and I lost it. I vomited on the floor, and the animating and sound editors gasping at the screen. The 5 frames were not as if they were 5 different photos, but they were played out in frames from a video. We saw the hand slowly lift out the guts, and we saw the kid's eyes focus on it. We saw 2 more frames of the kid beginning to blink. The lead sound editor told us to stop. He had to call on the creator to see this. Mr. Hillenberg arrived about in 15 minutes. He was confused to why he was called down there, so the editor just continued the episode. Once a few frames were showed, all screaming, all sound stopped. Squidward was just staring at the viewer, full frame face, for about 3 seconds. The shot quickly panned out, and that deep voice said, "Do it." Realistic blood and brain matter splatters on the wall behind him, and his bed, and he flies back with the force. The last 5 seconds of this show, his body on the bed, one at his side, one eye dangling on what's left above his head on the floor, staring blankly at it. Then the episode ends. Mr. Hillenberg was obviously angry at this. He demanded to know what the heck was going on. Most people left the room at this point, so it was just a handful of us to watch it again. Viewing the episode twice only served the imprint of the eternity in my mind, caused horrible nightmares. I am sorry I stayed. The only theory we could think of the file was edited by someone in the chain from the drawing studio to here. The CTO was called in to analyze what happened. The analysis of the file showed that it was edited over by new material. However, the timestamp was a mere 24 seconds before we began to view it. All equipment was examined for flaw in software and hardware as well as glitches, as if the timestamp may have glitched and showed the wrong time, but everything checked out fine. We don't know what happened to this day, and nobody does. There was an investigation due to the nature of the photos, but nothing came over it. No child scene was identified, and no clues were gathered from the data involved, nor physical clues in the photo. I never believed in unexplainable phenomena before, but now I have something that will happen, and I cannot prove anything behind it, but anecdotal evidence. I think twice about these things.